So God, I ask that safe spaces, not just in this moment, but safe spaces are made everywhere across this world.
I know every church doesn't practice it, but I want to acknowledge this month of Pride as we honor and celebrate the life and the love of those who identify differently than many of us.
This pastor is on his way to hell. It's a harsh statement, but sometimes it's a necessary statement if it's a true statement. But this pastor is going to find himself in hell unless he changes, unless he repents. There are also going to be people in hell that are going to look at him and owe him a debt of ingratitude. They will owe their existence, or a portion of their existence. They can trace it back to him. Why? Because what he's doing is he's affirming their sin in the name of love. This is Howard Wesley John. I can't remember how the man's name is. He's got 3 first names. That's not the issue. The issue is how he blatantly thumbs his nose at the scriptures in order to affirm sin, in order to appease those in the community.
Those are the extremes: sin, open and affirming. But I suggested to you that many of us land somewhere in the middle, that we are caught in a tension between our head and our heart. So the faithful and welcoming crowd says that we're open and we love LGBTQIA. They should not be excluded. They should be welcome. They should be safe. But we still hold to marriage being between a husband and a wife. Again, I'm not advocating for faithful and welcoming. I'm not advocating for ONA. I'm not advocating for homosexuality as a sin. I just want you to see what the issues are.
Now, this comes from our brother over at Woke Preacher Clips. And so make sure that you go over there and check him out. But when he says he's not advocating for homosexuality to be a sin, he's not advocating what the Bible calls a sin to be a sin. But what he's advocating is for a safe space. What he is doing, he's advocating for people to have cover who are in sin. He's not willing to call evil good, but he's willing to call good evil. That is, if you call out sin, then what you're doing is evil. The Bible says something about someone like him. It says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. He thinks he's doing something well. He thinks that he is serving the Lord, or maybe he just simply, he could be deceived. Now that's giving him the benefit of the doubt. Doesn't mean that he's going to go to heaven because of that. Doesn't mean that your good intentions are going to get you to heaven. No, what's the old saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so now that's just saying if he's getting the benefit of the doubt, but I don't think so. He absolutely knows the word, at least to a degree, to where he cannot find in scriptures where this is okay. And even though this was back in 2020, we've covered a couple times of him saying some things that he should not have said in terms of appeasing that particular community, appeasing sin. But just in case you think that that was then, and this is not a pattern of what he does, well, here's him just recently this year during Pride Month.
I know every church doesn't practice it, but I want to acknowledge this month of Pride as we honor and celebrate the life and the love of those who identify differently than many of us. Here's the truth of the matter: that at Alfred Street, we desire to create a safe space for all of God's children to love, to worship, to be seen, to be served, to be safe, to be in a place where they can honor God in their lives. And I am proud to be part of a church that respects that.
How are you proud to be a part of a church that respects that? Let's just put the scriptures, because I want to just make sure that we understand where he is. This is Paul in Romans 1. He says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Now, he is doing just that. He's suppressing the truth really in the name of righteousness, but it really is unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident within them. For God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. He has no excuse. Plus, he's got a book. He literally has the book before him. Even those who could look at nature then could see what the truth was, but he has literally a book. He says, for even though they knew God, that didn't mean that they didn't have an actual relationship, but they know about God, i.e. through his word. They did not honor him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculations and foolish in their heart. Their foolish hearts were darkened. professing to be wise, and you see this. You see a lot of people who lean left, who are progressive, liberal in their theology, who profess to be wise. He says they really became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for the image and form in the form of a corruptible man and of birds and four-footed animals and crawling creatures. Here it is. And God gave them over to their lust of their hearts, to impurity, that their bodies would be dishonored among them. For they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, which is what we're seeing this whole month about pride and so forth. It is a lie, and worship and serve the creature rather than the creator. Look what it says in verse 26, and this is the part that's really important. For this reason, God gave them over to their degrading passions. Things that you want to do, that you want to promote, fine, have at it. He says, for their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural, and in the same way also the men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another, men with men, committing indecent acts and receiving their own person the due penalty of their error. And here's where he comes in. And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper. So in other words, God passed over them, left them in their state. To reprobate means to pass over, leave them as they are, being filled with all unrighteousness, wicked, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are all gossip, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding. Now drop down to verse 32. He says, and although they know, dear pastor, although they know the ordinances of God, that those who practice such things are worthy of death, they not only do the same, but they also, here it is, what he's doing, give hearty approval to those who practice them. So where does the Bible say that a person like him is going to end up at? In hell. It's not me just being mean. This is the Bible. This is the Lord stating what's going to happen to such a person.
I know that every church doesn't, and that's fine. If you have difficulty with that, I have tons of other churches I can recommend to you that you can go to. But in this space, we honor the presence of God and the image of God and all of God's created creatures, all of humanity, all of those who serve the Lord our God. And I am just thankful that we remember the love of God covers all of us. That we are a loving church family. Jesus said, this is how you people will know that you're my disciples. We have love one for another.
What he said is, I guess, is kind of cute for him and his audience, that I can point you to a church, or I know of a church that will really, truth be told, function like a church. This is not how a church is supposed to react. It's not how a church is supposed to behave. This indeed is not a true church. And when you say that we're supposed to love one another, this is how that they know us, that we're disciples of his by the love that we show one to another. Loving someone does not mean affirming someone. You don't leave someone in a sin and say it's okay. You don't find someone who's addicted to some sort of drug and say it's okay, keep doing it. That's the way God made you. Let's just affirm that. We don't do that. But apparently we do. Now, what does the Bible say about someone like him or his church? Paul says regarding the man who is having this immoral sexual relationship with his father's wife, and this person is considered to be a sexually immoral person, and the word that's used here is where we get the word pornography. He says, but I actually wrote you not to associate with any so-called brother if he is an immoral person or a sexually immoral person, not to even eat with such a person, much less invite this person in and celebrate their sin in the house of the Lord, in this church, this building where we come together to worship, to fellowship, to study and learn of the Lord, and to offer up praise. And this is the place where we also want to offer up a moment of understanding and affirming their sin. No, and what ends up happening is you have people in that church who find comfort, who find aid, and they show up there, and all it's doing is confusing other people to think that it's okay to live that way and be that way. This is not a church. This is a wicked place. This is an ungodly place. This is a perverted place. This is not a church. This is really, truth be told, and I hate to use this term, but it is a garbage example of someone using the Bible to promote sin.
When the church say they affirming, what does that mean to you, or what does that make you feel? How do you take that? Are you feeling more welcome?
I feel like I'm going to belong. I feel like I'm going to belong.
Now, when you're somewhere in the place and the people feel like that they're okay with their sin, you're not uncomfortable with it. I don't care who you are. I don't care what the sin is. If you are comfortable with your sin by the preaching, by the welcome mat being rolled out at that particular church, you're at the wrong church. It's not a church.
One of the most painful human experiences, thinking about mapping the atlas of the heart, she talks about is being invisible. And I think Alfred Street saying you are affirming church means I can come here and not be concerned about anything. I could just show up and hear the word because I'm also dealing with inflation. I'm also dealing with social justice. But at least at this one aspect of my life, I can come here and be affirmed in this space. And I'll probably I'll probably, pay my tithes. If I go to church and they bashing me, I'm not going to give my tithes.
I mean,
even more of a reason for the church to affirm, to accept you, to say it's okay what you're doing, because, hey, there's also a financial incentive for the church.
I'm not. Got my money. I work hard for my money. Capitalism is beating us.
Yeah.
Romans 2.
Oh, come on.
Now, I want you to hear how this person twists the scriptures. First of all, I guess he's really not twisting the scriptures, because notice where he's reading out of. He's reading out of the Passion Translation, a horrible, wretched translation, and he's reading Romans 2. We're going to have to go back and look at it ourselves to see what it doesn't say and what it does say.
In the Passion Translation says, no matter who you are, before you judge the wickedness of others, you had better remember this. You are also without excuse, for you too are guilty of the same kind of things. When you judge others and then do the same things they do, you condemn yourself.
Now, let's deal with that first. He said, let's go to Romans chapter 2, starting in let's start in verse 1. Therefore, you have no excuse. Everyone, now, by the way, this is after what he said. That's the interesting thing. It's after what he just said about homosexuality and other vile things, and giving a comfort and approving of such things. He says, therefore, that's what the therefore is there for. Therefore, you have no excuse. Every one of you who passes judgment, for in that which you judge another, you condemn yourself. For you who judge practice the same thing. So, in other words, you judge rightly, not hypocritically. And we know that the judgment of God rightly falls upon those who practice such things. But do you suppose this, oh man, when you pass judgment on those who practice such things and do the same thing yourself, that you'll escape judgment? Well, I mean, if we're not actually involved in this homosexual lifestyle, then are we allowed to make a statement about it? Sure we are. We're not being a hypocrite about this. Or do you think lightly of the riches of his kindness and tolerance and patience, not knowing that the kindness of God leads you to repentance? What he's really trying to get people to do and trying to sell is that you just ought to keep your mouth shut. Don't judge anyone. He's offering a deterrent to even judge rightly.
God's wonderful declaration that we are righteous in his eyes can only come when we put our faith in Christ and not in keeping the law. After all, is God the God of the Jews only, or is he equally the God for all humanity? Of course, he's the God of all people. Since there is only one God and he will treat us all the same, he eliminates our guilt and makes us right with him by faith, no matter who we are. That is what an affirming church is.
And that came from what book again?
That is the book of Romans, chapter 2, verse 1, and then that's Romans chapter 3 and a couple different.
And they can find this text where again?
In the Bible.
In the what?
The Holy Bible.
In the Holy Bible.
Well, no, you don't find that in the Holy Bible. You find that in the Passion Translation. Now, what they really, because the Passion Translation will twist the scriptures. Now, let's go and look something that he negated to look at in Romans 3. He says, in this verse 8, he says, and why not say, as we are slanderously reported, and as some claim that we say, why not just say, let us do evil that good may come? Their judgment is just. His point is, shall we just go ahead and just say, you know what, it's okay to do evil. Let's go ahead and do wrong. It's okay. It's no problem, because God is just. That's not an affirming church. That's a lying church. That's a wicked church. That's a church that everyone who practices such things that's being taught there will go to hell. And there's no way around it. And someone might get upset because you make that statement. Listen, me making that statement doesn't compare to what it's going to actually feel like having to go there. And if you go there, you're there on your own accord because you decide to rebel against the word. You literally have the word before you, and you don't want to lean to it. You'd much rather do what you want to do to serve your own desires. That's fine. God will deal with you accordingly. But in the meantime, a church like Alfred Street Baptist Church, I believe this church is in Chicago, and Dr. Howard John Wesley, not a man of God. This man is also on his way to hell. And so be warned, any other church that does the exact same thing, that wants to affirm sin, again, woe to those that call evil good and good evil, exchanging the two. That person will literally have hell to deal with.